Whew. Shout out to Heat Culture, boy. Let me tell you. Welcome to the Knicks Film School Postgame Show presented by BetUS. A get well game for the New York Knicks after what was a long and somewhat grueling road trip that certainly caused its fair share of consternation within Knicks land over here. And this game, the way it started out, looked like it was going to cause quite a bit more consternation. But then a bunch of stuff happened, and it was a lot of fun, and there were some many celebratory moments, and we will go through them soon. But I would be remiss to start this postgame show anywhere other than with the carcass of what used to be a pretty proud franchise in Miami. I won't talk too long about that team that the Knicks just mopped the floor with because they are not relevant, and we don't really talk about irrelevant things on this show, or at least I strive not to. But first and foremost, I hope Tracy Morgan is okay. And if anybody hasn't seen the picture of Tracy Morgan, go look up on the internet. If that moment wasn't symbolic of the Heat this season and what happens to them at some point during seemingly every game, then I'll be damned. Because watching this game tonight, I came to the very, very, very reluctant conclusion, because I have touted Heat culture in the past as a real thing. And I finally realized there is no such thing as Heat culture. LeBron James wanted to come play with his buddies, and then they sold their soul for Jimmy Butler. That's it. That's Heat culture right there in a nutshell. And whatever semblance of it actually existed at one time is dead. And boy, oh boy, does it feel good to sweep that team for the first time in over 30 years. What can I say? They had it coming. Okay, enough about that decrepit franchise. Let's talk about the Knicks. So Knicks entered this game, I thought, with just a lot going on. Like, they were 2-2 without Jalen Brunson. Obviously, that's really good. I think any Knick fan worth their salt would sign for something around a 500 record, maybe a little bit better than a 500 record, given the quality of opponents. Without the captain, I think if you look at this team and you just take Jalen Brunson off of it, and you ask yourself, well, what are they? What could they be over the course of a full season? Which thankfully we don't have to worry about. I don't know. Are they a 44 win team? Are they a 500 team? Are they a little bit worse than 500? I think they'd probably get up somewhere around the mid 40s if I had to guess. And yet, despite the fact that they've started off exactly that, 2-2 before this game, there was just a lot of noise. I mean, go back and listen to the podcast that I just did with Jeremy Cohen, in which we were bouncing all over the place. I spent a whole segment talking about, is Tom Thibodeau like, is he gonna be out of a job in a few months, like almost regardless of what happens in the postseason, or maybe I should say barring a long postseason run. And you even saw it tonight, minutes where you got Precious Achiuwa with whether it was Mitchell Robinson or Josh Hart in the first half. So, like, every night you watch a Knick game, you turn on a Knick game, you're gonna see some stuff that bothers you. You're gonna have some stuff that leaves a bit to be desired. But what made this game special for me, and I do think this is a memorable game, despite the fact that the Heat once again are a empty husk of an NBA basketball organization, is we know how the Knicks respond to adversity with Jalen Brunson in uniform. We know because we've seen it time and time and time again since Jalen Brunson got here. Before Jalen Brunson got here, wasn't always as easy to respond to adversity. I mean, the entire season before he arrived absolutely spiraled out of control, and it's not because there wasn't talent on that team. There was, but everything just went to shit because they had no guiding light. And I think if you want to even take it back to the last game, you know, in what was we had a great time at the watch party. It was a competitive game, but down the stretch against Golden State, who is an excellent team, Miami is not. I want to be very clear about those two things. But Knicks down the stretch, 1 for 7 during the relevant closing portion of the game before some meaningless stuff in the last 25 seconds. 1 for 7 from the field and 2 turnovers. And it didn't look great. So when they came in tonight and they got down 13 or 12-0, literally 12-0 right off the bat. And boy, oh boy, did their offense look inept during that 12-0 run for the Heat. You had to wonder were there moments during the moments during the West Coast trip where their offense looked good? Was that just they hadn't taken the time to process Brunson going out and they were kind of, not riding on a high, but it was almost like muscle memory from when Brunson was in there, if that makes any sense. And obviously you got a massive Mikal Bridges game during that stretch. You got a massive Karl-Anthony Towns game. Well, I consider it a really good Karl-Anthony Towns game against Golden State. You got some really strong individual performances, but even then the offense was a borderline bottom 5 offense. Now, the flip side of that coin was that the defense was very good. We'll get back to that in a bit. But back to the offense, when they look like they were not going to put up 70 points tonight over those first few minutes. And I saw James Edwards does a great job covering the Knicks for The Athletic this year. We have to have him on the pod again soon. Tweeted out in the very early portion of the game after the Knicks were getting off to that start. He's like, yeah, I chalked this one up to a schedule loss because I know how I felt coming off a 5-game West Coast trip. So I can only imagine how they felt. And you had that feeling watching the start of this game, watching this inept offense not be able to get out of their own way. And then bit by bit by bit, they started to put it together. And we could say that Karl-Anthony Towns single-handedly turned the game on its head, and I don't think that would be inaccurate. He is certainly the first player that I want to talk about on an individual basis from this game. And for anybody who may not have seen it or whatever the case may be, the Knicks were down to start the second quarter 29-18. And then after Kal-El Ware made an alley-oop, they were down by 31-18, down by 13, tied the largest deficit of the game. From that point forward, Karl-Anthony Towns went on a personal 15-0 run. I thought the Knicks started to put it together a little bit on offense before that run, but starting to put it together a little bit is very different from actually going out there and completely and utterly dominating a stretch of basketball like there aren't 5 guys, and I've said this before on the post games this year, there are not 5 guys in the league that could do what Karl-Anthony Towns does when Karl-Anthony Towns is going right. And boy, oh boy, was he going right for that stretch. You saw the full arsenal. Again, what was Miami doing? They only had one guy to worry about. Nobody else on the floor could do a blessed thing. And yet they allowed him to bring the Knicks back into that game. And yet, even after that run, the Knicks were losing this game at the start of the third quarter. Only by whatever it was, a couple of points. And that's going to lead me to, after Towns, the second of 3, because I think there are 3 co-lead stories from this game. It's going to lead me to the second co-lead story of this game, which is a defense. And again, we got to couch it, right? We got to couch it. The Heat suck. Yes, the Heat suck. They still have talented basketball players on their basketball team, allegedly. Tyler Hero looked really good in the first half. He was draining pretty much everything. Bam Adebayo has been a multi-time All-Star. I know he hasn't had the best offensive season but that dude's pretty good. Duncan Robinson was flame throwing tonight. Went 5 for 9 from 3. So like these guys were all out there on the floor, and like Jaime Jaquez Jr. could do a couple things. Haywood Highsmith could do a few things. I know their bench is not exactly strong, although Davion Mitchell, man, I'm going to be apologizing to Benji Ritholtz till I'm old and gray for making fun of him for taking Davion in our skills draft a few months ago. Shout out to Benji. Anyway, so like what ended up being a 41-15 third quarter. Yeah, the Heat just absolutely stinking up the joint. That's part of the story. But I would argue that the Knicks defense in a performance that we've seen individual performances like what OG Anunoby single-handedly did to the Heat in the last game these two teams played. It helped the Knicks come back from a 17-point deficit. That was an outstanding individual defensive performance. I'm not sure that we've seen a collective defensive effort like the one that we saw tonight. And I'm going to pull up, let me get, here we go. We got our friends at Pivot Fade, who they do a great job getting the lineup stats, right off the bat as soon as these games are over. So let's see here. I'm trying to do this. Okay. So Knicks lineups in this game, the starting lineup was very good. They played 14 minutes, plus 11.7. Good offensive rating, very good defensive rating, 103.7. This is actually a comical number. The lineup of Hart, Achua, Towns, Payne, and Shamet, they had a 46.2 defensive rating. But that's not the lineup that I was going to reference. The lineup that I was going to reference, McBride, Robinson, Hart, Bridges, and Anunoby. So basically, Robinson in for Cat and McBride obviously in for the injured Brunson. Arguably New York's best defensive lineup, but I don't even know that it's arguable. So they played 5 minutes, actually gave up 100 defensive rating, which is higher than I thought it would be. But with that lineup, with that group, I thought to get the ball rolling on defense with that utterly dominant defensive performance in the third quarter, and it was one possession after another, with blocks and steals and just hustle plays and everything. And shout out to Mikal Bridges for scoring his own 9 straight points. Couldn't quite get to Cat's level, but 9 straight's not too shabby. And yeah, OG Anunoby was at the center a lot of it. And yes, OG Anunoby's presence out there does so much, especially when he is getting his hands in everything. And that was awesome. And I mean, there was a moment, there were 2 moments. One where he got his giant mitts on a ball that led to the tie-up. And then on that very same possession, I have never seen one human being completely engulf another human being, at least, not in a porno. But what OG Anunoby did to Tyler Hero there on the baseline, where Hero couldn't even get a freaking shot off. This guy was an all-star less than 2 months ago. He was ziplocked by OG Anunoby. That was pretty crazy stuff. And then perhaps spurred by the defensive performance, I don't know, we got what I am considering my third lead story of the game. Now, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So this one's going to be shame on me if it doesn't come out, if it doesn't end up coming to fruition. Gotta choose my words carefully here after that last reference. After the Kings game, I got up here and I waxed poetic about 10 minutes about how Josh Hart was back. Because he had 4 threes or in 6 attempts, and he looked confident and he looked good doing it, right? I am not going to go full tilt again, because I did that once and it didn't work out so well because the last 2 games, Josh Hart went back to being the Josh Hart that we've seen for most of the last couple months. But boy, did it seem like Josh Hart rediscovered his Josh Hartness somewhere in that third quarter. And it started innocently enough, funny enough, with a banked in long 2 at the end of the shot clock that I don't know that he intended to bank in, but whatever. But that was followed up immediately by a 3, which was taken with confidence, as opposed to he took 3 threes in the first half. One looked worse than the last, and none of them were taken with confidence. Took the 3 in that third quarter with confidence. And then right after that, wouldn't you know it, Josh Hart starts making one beautiful pass after another, and he becomes playmaker Josh Hart. Whereas in the first half, had 10 rebounds in the first half. He was nitty-gritty. I'm going to figure out ways to help my team win the game, even if I can't hit the far side of a barn. We saw that. So we saw every version of Josh Hart in this game. But the thing is, in order for the Knicks to reach their ceiling this year, and in order for the Knicks to reach their ceiling as a team, and this really has become the theme of the season, because Josh Hart, what he does to the spacing when he's not shooting with confidence, when he's not playing with confidence, and then the head coach, his reluctance to really make any adjustments whatsoever. And again, you saw it in the first half. We were talking about it on the halftime show. Shout out to all my Substack newsletter subscribers. And apologies, my Wi-Fi sucked during the halftime show, so I apparently froze and then cut out. But we were talking about this, that, I'm convinced it's not that Tom Thibodeau doesn't see what's going on. I mean, I know there are some people out there who think that he is the dumbest man on the planet. He's not, I assure you. He sees what's going on, but he is sticking with his guy through thick and thin because he thinks it'll obviously pay off in the long run. And I emphasize his guy. Josh Hart is as much a Thibodeau guy as there has ever been. And he is continuing to trot him out there in these lineups, irrespective of what struggles he may be having. Because in his mind, it's like, look, it's Josh Hart. He's going to figure it out. That's what I think, at least. Well, tonight, that decision might have paid off. Because maybe, just maybe, what we saw from Josh Hart in the third quarter there can get him going for the season. Obviously, ties Clyde's record for 8 triple-doubles in a season. That record was achieved in 1968-69 season, 26 years before Josh Hart was born. So talk about a record that has stood the test of time. So yeah, those are my 3 big things, but like, we could go in any direction that you want in this game. We could talk about how they kind of found themselves after a slow start. We could talk about Mikal Bridges, talk more about his offensive game. I thought he was much more aggressive in the second half. And he was efficient in the first half. Shout out to Jason on the halftime show, complained about this. He was efficient, but he was not aggressive. Well, second half, third quarter specifically, he was as aggressive as you will ever see him. 4 more free throws tonight, 28 points on 14 shots. How many times this season has Mikal Bridges scored twice as many points as shot attempts that he has taken or more? I am going to go ahead and wager that this was the first time that particular thing has happened. So we could talk about Bridges. Talked about OG Anunoby's defense overcame what was an iffy or not so great offensive night for him. Deuce McBride, again, not a great shooting night for him. Maybe some tired legs, but hit some big threes when it counted, when the Knicks were making their push. Nice game from Deuce. Big defensive performance from Precious Achiuwa. Shout out to Benji, pointed it out on Twitter because Benji sees all. Achiuwa, some nice defensive minutes there in the first half. It was a get-well game. Campaign hit a 3. Landry Shamet hit 3 threes. You know what? Let's end here. Wasn't one of my 3 lead stories for the game, but let's end here. It's only appropriate that we end with Mitchell Robinson. It's only appropriate because Mitchell Robinson 2 years ago against the same Miami Heat team in the playoffs was completely taken out of the series. Immediately after a series in which he was the best player on the floor in that series, arguably. He was completely taken out of that Heat series. Well, tonight, I think we can look at the game Mitch had, and it was a little bumpy at times in the first half. But when he got going, his two-way impact, there was one sequence, I noted it down, where it was early in the fourth quarter, where Mitch, he had an offensive rebound and a really nice putback on one end, and on the very next, the defensive possession on the other end of the floor, I forget whether it was a block or a steal or forcing a turnover. It was something. Mitchell Robinson tonight finished his highest minute total since he's been back. That's notable. 24 minutes, 5 for 7 from the field, 9 rebounds, 5 on the offensive glass. How you doing? 2 blocks, 2 steals. That's a Mitch stat line. That's a Mitch stat line. So good place to end it. We could talk about him. We could talk about anything you want to talk about. It's all good stuff for the Knicks tonight. And yeah, get well game indeed. The Heat suck. Whew. I love saying that. I haven't got to say it very much over the years. I love saying it though.